menopause was the best thing that ever happened to me. But in addition to the physical changes that I most welcome, actually, it's the ability to still be in your prime, because this isn't our grandmother's menopause,
No, it's not.
And still be filled with curiosity and wonder, and still be sassy and sexy and funny. And my parishioner friend was right. Your life does not start until you're 50.
Welcome to Hope Comes to Visit, a place for soft landings, soul truth, and the unedited middle. I'm Danielle Elliott-Smith, and today's episode is an invitation into a tender, transformative conversation with a beautiful soul. Maria de los Angeles is an award-winning writer and journalist. She is also the publisher of the Heart-Centered Living newsletter, a curated collection of news stories, resources, and delightful curiosities that inspire action and contemplation. A monthly newsletter, Heart-Centered Living opens the door to a wide range of topics for the practical mystic or anyone longing for grounded spirituality. Born in Puerto Rico to Cuban refugees, Maria was raised in South Florida and lived in Washington, D.C. before leaving the U.S. in January 2025. She is currently writing a new life chapter in her ancestral homeland, northern Spain. Let's take a quick moment to thank the people that support and sponsor the podcast. When life takes an unexpected turn, you deserve someone who will stand beside you. St. Louis attorney Chris Dully offers experienced one-on-one legal defense. Call 314-384-4000 or 314-DUI-HELP, or you can visit dullylawfirm.com. That's D-U-L-L-E lawfirm.com for a free consultation. Maria, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's such a delight to be here with you today.
I am so excited to dive into your story because there are so many pieces of it that I truly believe are going to resonate with our audience. So I want to start. One of the things when you and I were first messaging and writing back and forth, I know that one of the pieces that first connected with me was that you took care of your parents. I just moved my dad from Florida to the St. Louis area, and I am in that stage where I've stopped having to actively take care of young children and am now making sure that my dad is okay. You mentioned that your parents had Alzheimer's, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about that piece of your journey.
Well, I like to say that it was the most beautiful and hardest thing I would ever do in my life. Of course, now I have a cancer diagnosis, so life is upping the challenge. But I can tell you this, and I promise to get back to that later, that prepared me for today. And why? Because it really was incredibly humbling to change your parents' diapers and to confront death and to see the life cycle come to an end. It was really, really scary at the time. But it broke open my heart in such a way to let so much love in, which is something that I hadn't experienced before. And
now, we mentioned in the intro that your parents were Cuban refugees, right? So
yes.
Where were you raised?
I was raised in Miami, in South Florida, in the exile community of Cuba.
Okay. And so your parents, how long ago was it that you were taking care of them? And they both had Alzheimer's?
Well, they were on the spectrum of memory disorder. So my mom had full-blown Alzheimer's. My father had vascular dementia. And I just sometimes say Alzheimer's for simplicity.
Of course.
But different types of memory loss, different types of bodily loss function, et cetera, different needs. And so that was around the mid-aughts to 2017 or so.
Okay. And so you took care of both of them?
Yes. For the most part, yes.
I know that my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and that was my first encounter with it. And it was interesting to me to watch her revert, was the best way I could describe it. She went from, she would lose her most recent memories. Like the first thing she forgot was that I had kids. And then she forgot that I was married. And then she lost my brother and I. And then my dad was in her mind a young man and then a toddler. Was that experience similar for you?
Yes. And there was one pivotal moment which had to do more with the present. And I wrote a poem about this. The moment when my mom put dish soap into the frying pan instead of oil.
Really?
And that changed everything. And then in this poem, I talk about what it was like to feed her, and she could no longer feed herself. And I became a mother to my mother. And then she was nonverbal. The points of non-recognition, when they did happen, at least my parents weren't aggressive. They wouldn't sundown, which is another thing and that I'm grateful for. But it really brought to mind how we take story for granted and how our memories shape who we are and how it all just dissipates. It's that scaffolding of life that suddenly goes away. And imagine how bewildering that is.
What a beautiful phrase, scaffolding of life. I don't know if you have the poem handy or if you're willing to share it, but I'm always open to...
Maybe towards the end.
Okay, absolutely. I'm always open to that level of storytelling and beauty. How would you describe that experience of taking care of your parents?
I'm not going to lie. It sucked and I hated it and I loved it at the same time. You can hold both things. And you can do hard things that I never thought I could do. Now, I didn't have kids, but I ended up having my parents.
Right.
And so I had to improvise. Nobody teaches you this, right? When you have a baby, you prepare for 9 months and you read the books and you get a baby shower. Nobody does that for the caregiver, the adult caregiver of elderly parents. And so I became the medical manager. I mean, it started very gradually, like take them to doctor's appointments. But then I had to advocate and take notes. Managing their pills, which changed dosage constantly, was a part-time job. I kid you not. I practically lived at CVS.
I can't even imagine.
CVS and hearing the music was very triggering. Years later, when I had to do that, I was like, oh, I forgot about this. It sounded like Liberace. It was really off-brand. But anyway...
it's what you hear in your nightmares now. Yeah. CBS's hold music. And
all the hospitalizations and triages. I mean, my nervous system was constantly up here. I had my adrenals were just flying around. And that went on for a few years. And I broke the number one rule of caregiving, which is take care of yourself first. I just didn't know better.
Okay. So was there anyone around to remind you to take care of you, or did you feel isolated?
I did feel somewhat isolated. I did have friends who would go grocery shopping for me. My sisters would come in sometimes and help, but I was largely in charge of a lot of this day-to-day stuff that can be very onerous. It's like being a single mom. I'm not saying they didn't help. That's not fair to say. But I was micromanaging everything and micro-advocating everything, especially with senior care in the U.S. I learned some really ugly things about the system over there that made me ashamed to be human. And the things that I saw in nursing homes and the lack of regulation or too much regulation, I mean, it was horrifying. I described it as a house of horrors to see elderly people abandoned like that. But I did have some support. I also didn't know what to ask for. right?
That's a really important point. So is there a recommendation that you would make? So if someone is going through this right now, if I am heading in that direction now, what do I ask for?
Well, now there's many more resources. I think it also kind of blew up when I first started. I think it was caregiving.org on Twitter, that was sending out stuff. And now there's many more caregiver resources websites. There's more awareness. And I think my biggest piece of advice is if you have parents, and this is not a fun thing to say, but you can't abort your parents. You can't not have parents. I mean, unless you break up with them, And so families really need to plan early on what it's going to be like later for a worst case scenario. If it doesn't happen, great. But who's going to commit to taking them to the doctor? It's family planning, but it's not about having babies. So preparing ahead of time, downsizing your parents' home, moving them close to you if you need to, taking dad's car keys away. I mean, all of these things you have to prepare for. And I'm not saying you'll be ready when you get there, but at least you'll know they're coming. And then, there's more. I can't name them specifically right now, but for example, Alzheimer's.org, caregiver.org, your local state or local government, actually there is, to date that I know of, they will pay adult children to take care of their parents. There's just some paperwork involved, which I didn't know about at the time. I didn't know if Florida had that. That would have been really helpful because I had to put my life on hold.
That's really interesting. That feels like something that either I should be researching now or that we should certainly recommend that.
And long-term healthcare insurance for whatever Medicare or Medicaid won't cover for the nursing homes, which are ridiculously
very expensive. Very, very, very expensive. Yes, that is. It's very valuable advice. And so you're talking about all the logistic, all the technical. Let's talk about the heart side of this, right? Because I have witnessed a few friends recently losing parents to Alzheimer's, and the few friends that I've actually seen going through this happen to be writers, and they've been beautifully transparent about the experience. And I can only imagine what this does to your heart, what this experience is like on the inside. How did you handle it? How did you make sure that you were okay?
I didn't handle it very well at the time. I was so overwhelmed. But, like a butterfly inside a cocoon, there was stuff happening. I just didn't see it then. That when I came out at the other end, I was transformed. And so how I handled it was just taking care of the immediate moment. It seemed like there was always something to triage. And that was it. That's all you can do in the middle of a crisis. You crash and burn later, right? But when I came out of it, I realized that I was transforming. I just didn't know it then. And what ended up happening is that to let go of my parents, I did this private ritual by the sea, and I literally held their ashes in my hands. And that changed me because instead of feeling fear, I felt the deepest love I've ever known. And my fear just dissipated, People ask me why I am not afraid now. And I said, well, I already went through that. And I might be afraid 5 minutes from now, but right now, I've already experienced this mystical thing that I would imagine it's like when a person has a child, right? That it's just so beyond you and yet so incarnated.
Right.
And to really, in life, we're just so like, oh, yeah, I have this body and this skin and hair
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, but there's the ashes too. And, there's this whole, I don't know, there's almost a poetry to that. If we lived anesthetized to that, if we're always in denial, um, it's harder to prepare for these things. And I just thought of something like the Death Cafe movement is a really good one to get into. Even if you don't want to become a death doula, talk to some death doulas because they train to help families, not with the medical stuff, but with the emotional stuff of letting go. They help the patient and they help the family. And that's some really, really wonderful work.
So I am familiar with death doulas, but in case members of our audience are not, I'll allow you to explain death doula so that anyone who is not familiar with what that is.
Sure. Well, just like we have birth doulas, comadres in Spanish, they're women who are not necessarily obstetricians, although in the olden times they would have been helped actually literally deliver the baby. But the death doula is for the other passage, the one that is departing the body. And they come in and they evaluate your family, your situation. They'll create projects or tasks or things that you can do to give you emotional support, and they hold your hand the whole way. There's a certain process to dying, even with the body, if you're dying naturally, like how your breathing changes, so you don't panic, and you see, like, this is my person is just passing through. It's their time to go. And of course it's hard, but information is power. And it is comforting. This is one time when ignorance may not be bliss.
Right.
For you to understand and also confront your own mortality.
It feels as though it would allow the process to be as peaceful as it possibly could be.
Yes. And it's a time, I think, in certain faiths, some people do pay a lot of attention to this transition time. But I think we live in a society where we're just kind of trying to brush it under. And there should be ritual. Person's going to die a month from now. Well, that's a whole month to honor and support that transition versus trying to rush through it. And, and also, of course, grief. There's pre-bereavement, bereavement, post-bereavement. I remember someone in one of my grief groups, when someone would ask her, "Are you feeling better?" She would say, "It's not a cold." It's never going to go away, especially if the love was really great. So
Right.
I think grief education in our world is also really,
Lacking.
really key.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I want to go back to something you said, because it sounds to me as though you mentioned ritual, and I feel as though so much of your path has been centered around recognizing and honoring ritual, at least from the time that you realized that this painful process you were going through with your parents was almost designed to direct you. You hold your parents' ashes, you honor their passing, and how soon after that ritual and spiritual experience did you decide to leave Miami?
So my father passed away January 26th, and I left on Resurrection Sunday the following April. Right,
Really?
the appropriate day to start your life over. I went to a service on the sea at sunrise, and I remember a fellow parishioner telling me, after I shared my journey with her, I was 49 at the time, and she said, "Hon, your life won't start until you're 50. Just go. Just go." And she was right. And here I am 7 years later. And and how soon. I mean, I was coming off of this intense, economically fraught, obviously grief-ridden, what the experience. And to decompress, I do the normal crazy thing I do. I just got on a Greyhound bus with no plan. And I visited friends who opened their homes to me so I could grieve and spend some time with them. They were familiar with my journey. And 9 months later, I got a job in Washington, D.C. But I had no plan.
Okay.
And that was fate, providence, God, higher power, whatever you want to call it. But I had faith. And I knew that I had to leave, that I had nothing to anchor me there anymore. It was time for me to fledge, as it were.
Okay.
And that my parents would have wanted that too. Just go. And now I'm in Spain, which was a lifelong dream as well, to be closer to my roots.
I love that. So what has that journey been like for you? Because you mentioned that the challenges and the pain that you faced with your parents have uniquely prepared you for today, for where you are now.
Well, let's not forget that in between all of that, I got sober.
Ah, yes. Welcome. So you and I have that in common. So congratulations.
And of course, so when you go through this caregiving process, and then you go through the caregiving of yourself, getting sober process, I'm not going to say cancer is a piece of cake. Of course not. But I've been through some stuff. And,
right. Absolutely.
And honestly, when I relapsed, I really thought I was going to die. For real. This time, with this, not so much. Because I have care. I care for myself. And I have faith in my higher power. And I have my practices, and I live the program. So
you mentioned relapsing. So at what point were you initially sober that you relapsed in 2021, yes?
Yeah.
So at what point were you initially sober?
Around the time I got to DC, like late 2017.
Okay.
To COVID, that whole thing. And then some stuff happened, and then you just say, what's one glass of wine? Well,
one glass of wine can be 10.
And it's incredible how just quickly you just sink way down lower than you were before, and you don't even want to, and there you are. So, but that said, I needed to go through that
to be where you are now.
Today.
Right. Okay. So you relapse, and what brings you out of your relapse?
The miracle of a scholarship to a wonderful treatment center, and going back to meetings.
Okay.
And reuniting virtually with an old friend who became my sponsor, and of course, not isolating and bringing in community. And I've never looked back. That's what I needed, though. I needed the respite. It wasn't just the relapse; it was everything that led up to that.
It's interesting because every story of relapse that I have heard, it needed to happen, right? That was the piece that put things together in order for that new phase of sobriety to exist. It equipped you to be where you are now. It makes me wonder, had you not had that relapse and you had your cancer diagnosis, would you be as strong as you are now, right? I spoke to a previous guest who is also a friend, and I had said, I frequently have said, I believe that when we go through recovery, we should be exempt from hard things because we go through so much to find ourselves on this side of recovery. And yet life still happens. We still get cancer diagnosis. We still lose people and experience extreme grief. We still lose jobs and our cars break down and we take care of elderly parents. but we have to have learned how to feel and experience and live. And if we don't know how to do those things, that's when we are in danger of the relapse again, because that's what the addiction is. The addiction is, I don't want to feel.
Yeah.
And so much of the beauty of what I'm hearing in you and your story is how you are feeling, how you are actively living.
Absolutely.
Tell me about your cancer diagnosis.
Well, if I may just, you can hold that thought for a second,
Of course.
because I do have a newsletter on spirituality, which is very much combined with current affairs, and I do a lot of spiritual work. And I studied with Eckhart Tolle, and I took these classes on mysticism at Georgetown, auditing, because I just love this stuff, and it makes me happy. I'm curious. I lived in a wonderful city with an enormous spiritual interfaith community. Most people don't think of DC as spiritual, but it is. But like I tell my sponsor, and go back to the word scaffolding, for me, the 12 steps is the scaffolding of my life. Now, all of that other stuff really helps. And like what you're saying is that if we don't learn how to live with this structure, and which, by the way, is, I've lectured on this, is based on the Christ consciousness, but that's a whole other story. It's hard. And that's part of what helped me face this cancer diagnosis. Both things. And I continue to study and write about it. And so the cancer diagnosis is I have esophageal cancer.
Okay.
I have, hopefully by now, somewhat reduced 13-centimeter tumor right here, close to the heart center.
Okay.
And I'm undergoing radiation and chemo. This will be, I'm now in my second week of everything, for 6 more weeks. Okay.
I'm so grateful that you feel well enough to be chatting with us. And
yes, so am I.
You look fantastic.
Thank you.
How are you feeling?
I do also have a minor lung bronchial boo-boo. I'm taking antibiotics. We had to postpone the last meeting because I was coughing so much. But I'm feeling much better and finally getting some sleep. And of course that helps. I'm not able to go outside and walk these beautiful hills surrounding me here.
Okay.
But I will, as soon as I can breathe better. I'm usually very active, but I just think, you know what? This is a couple of weeks of cocooning. And my priority is to feel good and to feel joy. And when I don't feel so well, like I had some nausea earlier this week, a lot of brain fog and fatigue, it's normal. Then I just sit with that. And it's not easy, but the antidote for me is to supercharge my gratitude. I mean, constantly I'm grounding and I'm thanking, because it's a long story about how I ended up at this hotel near the hospital. God worked in my favor, even though it was extremely stressful to get here. And all of a sudden, these folks showed up in my life. They're taking me to radiation every day, even though it's just 5 minutes away, but I'm not going to schlep on the bus. And these are friends of my sister when she used to live here. And I just got instant community. And it's Spain, so everyone's like,
everyone's hugging you,
like instantly. Right. But as a friend told me she said, you had to leave in order to save your life. And of course, my health care is affordable. But I didn't leave the U.S. so I could get cheap health insurance. That wasn't it. Of course, I knew that would be a benefit, but I didn't know that I would have cancer. And here we are.
How long after you left the United States did your diagnosis arrive?
So I left January 9th and I got the diagnosis at mid-June.
Really? So this is a new diagnosis. How did you find out?
Well, my gastroenterologist looked at my biopsy and said, "You have cancer." You know what I did right after? I went and bought a chocolate bar.
Good for you.
I didn't eat it at the moment, but I did eat some ice cream. And I walked like 2 miles on the Bay of Santander and just took it all in. What else could I do?
You said that your experience with your parents uniquely prepared you for this diagnosis for where you are right now. In what way?
Well, confronting medicine like that, right? Not that I became an expert on medicine, but the ins and outs of what is required for a patient to receive care. I'm not talking about the IV. Oh, by the way, this is from the hospital, so don't be from when they pinched me. But the emotional infrastructure, right? What would I have given to them that I need now? And I'm not afraid to ask for help. Although there's that little voice in my head, I don't know if it's my American side or you're an independent woman side. I am not afraid to ask for help. And yet this little voice swoops in and I tell it, shh, be quiet. Because now is the time to receive. And I mean, just take it. Just take it. And you know what? Tomorrow I'm going to give. And I have given. So it's living this economy of grace, right? And then also understanding that I am not, I've got all my faculties about me, thankfully. I do not have Alzheimer's. I may feel like crap one day, but I'm coming into this physically strong. I was already eating healthy. I was not depressed. I was in a place that I came to because I wanted to, out of love, out of wanting to explore my history. And I think that makes a big difference, though, that to have experienced the death of my parents in that way, and then just say, well, now it's my turn to seize the day. My brother passed away 2 years ago. He was in his 60s. He had a dream to come here, and he died very suddenly from this respiratory disease. He was also very strong, and he never made it. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go. And here I am.
Good for you. What advice would you give to our listeners about seizing the day, about taking advantage of each day in front of them? You've had some surprising news you weren't expecting, and you are in the process of going after the moments that matter right in front of you. And still, life continues to happen around you.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that the idea is that we're never done. And if you believe certain things, you're not even done after you die. We're always healing. And so let's say that I'm going to survive this. Of course I am. Something else might kill me, but maybe not this. And there might be another challenge after that. But it's all part of a continual healing spectrum, right? I don't want to have cancer, but I'm almost not surprised because there's so much that we hold here in this center that I've carried so much grief my whole life. If you want to talk about it energetically, that is talking to me. Like I decided, I do use a particular hashtag that has an expletive in it, but I don't
have a problem with expletives if you would like to share.
Fuck cancer. But that's more
That's
for a
okay.
social media reason. But
Right.
I am not antagonizing my body. I
Right.
talk to my tumor. I haven't named it yet, but I
Okay.
say, what do you want? What do you need? What stories are you trying to tell me? Um,
How can I help you heal?
how can I help you heal? It's time for you to go. What does my inner child want? Let's talk about it instead of being afraid about it. It is part of me. It is, and I want to nurture my entire body, my mind and soul. It's it's all integrated.
Mm-hmm.
And so the other thing that helps me get motivated is to be fully present in the moment all the time. I mean, I already kind of lived like that, but I
Right.
really live like that now. And also the fact that, well, I'm nauseated now, but that is a symptom. I am not the symptom.
Right.
That is chemistry happening. You're not always nauseated.
Right.
And in those moments when I feel good, I just stop and go, oh, like I saw this sun shower the other day
Mm-hmm.
in this valley. And I said, all right, I'm really in love with this moment. This is so beautiful.
I love
And
that you do that. I do that too.
oh,
Do you find that I'm 52, we're only a few years apart. Do you find that you do that more now than you used to? Do you find that that is a function of age and wisdom and having witnessed life, or have you always been that way?
I've always been a child in awe. And I hope she never goes away.
I
But
love
life
that.
got in the way of her. And well, I will tell you, I mean, menopause was the best thing that ever happened to me. But in addition to the physical changes that I most welcome, actually, um, it's the ability to still be in your prime, because this isn't our grandmother's menopause,
No, it's not.
And still be filled with curiosity and wonder, and still be sassy and sexy and funny. And my parishioner friend was right. Your life does not start until you're 50, because now your creative energy is towards the world,
pouring
towards
forth.
yourself. You're more expletives, but I call it the great age of not giving fucks, except for the things that really matter.
Really
and
matter.
You have nothing left to give, but you still have some more of those. But for the right things, you're discerning.
Absolutely.
You're curating those Fs that you're giving out.
I couldn't possibly agree more. I have found that my fucks to give are very specific now. They no longer are directed to the things that do not matter. My boundaries are clear. I am very specific about where I put my energy because I know what I want to grow. I know where I am no longer giving out to the wrong people, the wrong things. I am far more protective of myself in a way that I never used to be.
Yeah.
I poured forth, giving to anyone and everyone. And while I still consider myself a giver, I am far more protective of that energy because I've learned.
Isn't that a great place to be?
It is. And I didn't get there until I was, I thought that was starting to happen in my 40s. And I thought, yeah, like this life doesn't happen until 40s. And I interviewed a girlfriend of mine a few weeks ago, and she's in her early 40s, and, she's had a lot happen. And she said, she was talking about how this next life is her best life, right? And I feel that even more so now in my 50s than I did in my 40s. And it feels very much that you are the same.
Yes. Hashtag fab over 50.
Yeah, there you go.
Everything.
There you go.
And I'm inspired. There's a lot of women, silver women on social media now. Also, just flaunting it. They start weight training when they're in their 60s. They're looking beautiful and spunky. Iris Apfel was my spirit animal. I mean, just live it up.
I love that. It's so delightful to have you on here. What do you think how would you define hope?
Well, hope definitely comes to visit. And it's knocking on your door. Sometimes that knock is a little rap, and sometimes it's pounding, but you have to open the door. And I talked to some people. I wrote a post on Facebook the other day about locating your faith, which is like hope. And someone wrote to me privately and said, I can't locate my faith. I said, are you sure? Nah, I just want to smoke a cigarette when I feel, or there's always something, and this is the addict in me talking, that got in the way of the pure hope or the pure faith that I believe is our spiritual birthright for everyone. And now that I look back on my life, I was dimming my own light. I was muddying up my connection to the divine or my God of my understanding, right? And so even in my darkest moment, there was like this tiny little microscopic kernel of hope that somehow pulled me through. And I never forget that.
I love that. I love that. I found that there was one period of my life where I couldn't see it. And it was at a time when I was working on this podcast. And at that time I thought, who am I to be doing a podcast on hope if I have finally reached a place where I can't even see it. I can't feel it. I've always been someone who can see the light, even if I don't know how to get there. And I realized that I had to go through that darkness in order to come out on the other side to be able to do this podcast. And I get to be grateful for that piece of my journey as well, because without each and every piece of my journey, I'm not the version of myself that I am right now. And I'm grateful for who I am right now. There are tough times, right? But without the tough and the hard, we don't recognize the glorious and the joyful and the beautiful. If everything felt amazing would eventually feel dull and beige. If everything was just an average color, the bright wouldn't be so vivid. So though it doesn't always happen during the difficult times, I get to be grateful for them afterwards. So,
yeah, I absolutely. And I think that hope is a muscle you train so that the next time you fall into the pit of despair, you've got a little more of a rope to pull you up. I'm very inspired by the story of St. John of the Cross, the great Christian contemplative, and he was literally in a dark pit when he wrote his book. And so I think of him down there and how in some way being in that darkness just reinforced his faith. And I sometimes, I'm not sitting here with rose-colored glasses. And let's say like I get depressed about something 4 weeks from now, but I can deal with it.
right.
Because I've already developed the muscle memory for hope, or the spiritual muscle memory for hope. And to remember that we've had good times and that we've overcome them. right? And that's got to come from here. Have faith in
Right.
yourself and to ask for help.
You are an inspiration. I am so grateful to have had this conversation with you. Where can people find you?
Well, my website is heartcenteredmaria.com. And on there, they will find links to my newsletter, my social media. I'm pretty much heart-centered Maria all over the place.
Okay.
And that's a good place to start. I haven't updated the website in a while. It doesn't talk about me moving to Spain yet, but at least it has links to everything.
And I'm also in our show notes. We'll be sharing or have shared your GoFundMe page where people
thank you so
can
much.
Support everything you've got going on right now with your cancer journey. So we definitely want to make sure that we're helping as much as we can.
Thank you.
With that. Is there anything that you'd like to share? Perhaps your poem before we go.
Sure. If you'll give me just a moment. I'm honored to be able to read this.
I'm honored that you're willing.
It's called Spoonfuls. She squirts dish soap instead of oil into the frying pan. Soon enough, no more cooking. Soon enough, spoon feeding. Soon enough, no more swallowing. Soon enough, no more water. Soon enough, last breath. Death does not come soon enough. Feeding my mother ever so slowly, Alzheimer swallows her memory, gulping her straight into the dark. Half an hour to eat 8 ounces of puree, spoonful by spoonful. She once fed me, nourishing her little bundle of joy, spoonful by spoonful. And now, my impatience, so mundane and so greedy, it ticks away. But infinity marks time in these quiet moments of love. Applesauce, upchuck, soiled bibs. I become a mother to my mother. And life serves me 46 years, a long gestation measured by thousands of meals. We never share between my first spoonful and my mother's last. Death does come soon enough. And mother, you told me so many stories, but never the one about the entire meaning of life contained in the final spoonful. Now the bowl is empty, and these are its pages.
Oh, Maria, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for honoring us with that. Your mother and your father were both so incredibly lucky to have had you taking care of them. And I'm lucky that you spent time with me today.
I feel so blessed to have spent time with you and to share my story. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm wishing you all the heart health and happiness. And I'm going to have to come visit you in Spain.
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah. Thank you for being
Absolutely.
here. And
Thank you.
friends, thank you so much for joining us on Hope Comes to Visit. I hope that we have met you where you are today and that you have felt the light of Maria's story and that you will turn around and share it with the people you know and you love, and that you will take time to subscribe and spend some more time with us in the coming weeks. Until then, take good care of you. Thank you for being here. Naturally, it's important to thank the people who support and sponsor the podcast. This episode is supported by Chris Dully, a trusted criminal defense attorney and friend of mine here in St. Louis, who believes in second chances and solid representation. Whether you're facing a DWI, felony, or traffic issue, Chris handles your case personally, with clarity, compassion, and over 15 years of experience. When things feel uncertain, it helps to have someone steady in your corner. Call 314-384-4000 or 314-DUI-HELP, or you can visit dullylawfirm.com to schedule your free consultation.